Dead men tell no tales. But 27 bullet holes tell a hell of a story, especially when every single one is in the back. In the 1930s, Homer Van Meter was John Dillinger's right-hand man, feared by banks and federal agents alike, true public enemies, both infamous for their crimes. In the late summer of 1934, Van Meter walked into a St. Paul alley carrying over $8,000 in cash. That's $200,000 today. But when his body was booked at the morgue, barely $1,000 remained. The rest simply disappeared. So what happened in that alley in St. Paul? Was he set up by the mob? Dirty cops? Someone higher up? At 28 years old, Homer Van Meter was one of the most feared mobsters in the Midwest.
Men get shot dead for pulling a knife on Homer Van Meter.
Homer Van Meter.
Homer Van Meter.
Homer Van Meter.
Yeah, there's Homer Van Meter.
Van Meter was wanted, dead or alive.
On that day in the shadow of the state capitol, his luck ran out. But to understand the execution, you have to understand the heat. By 1933, the Dillinger gang had embarrassed the law. They'd stole millions in today's dollars, left a trail of bodies, and made J. Edgar Hoover look like an amateur.
No case ever ends for the Federal Bureau of Investigation until it is solved and closed with the conviction of the guilty or the acquittal of the innocent.
Van Meter was at the center of that firestorm, breaking friends out of jail and robbing banks in broad daylight. Take Sioux Falls. It wasn't a robbery, it was an invasion. They took 30 hostages and turned the downtown district into a war zone, trading gunfire with police while the public watched in disbelief. And it wasn't just about the money, it was about the spectacle. Hollywood had spent the last 90 years trying to recreate the chaos that Dillinger and Van Meter were causing in real life. They looked unstoppable. Their photos ran in newspapers coast to coast, but Van Meter had an ace up his sleeve. He had friends in high places. It was called the O'Connor system, a devil's bargain unique to St. Paul. See, this wasn't just a hideout for Van Meter. St. Paul was the citadel of crime. You had the Barker Karpus gang, Babyface Nelson, Machine Gun Kelly. If you were on the FBI's most wanted list, you didn't go to Mexico, you went to Minnesota. Criminals could treat the city as a sanctuary, so long as they paid a fee and checked in with the police. The cops got their cut. The gangsters got a quiet place to disappear. Enter Detective Tom Brown, former police chief, current corrupt fixer. Van Meter wasn't just paying Brown off, he was investing in him. He donated thousands to Brown's campaign for sheriff. Hardly just a cop and a criminal, in the shadows of St. Paul, they were business partners. But by 1934, the partnership became a liability. Dillinger was dead, gunned down in Chicago. The FBI was circling, and Tom Brown, stripped of his power and facing corruption charges, needed to clean house. If the feds got to Van Meter first, he might talk. Van Meter returned to St. Paul thinking he had a safe place to hole up. Instead, he walked into a trap. At the corner of University and Marion, Brown and 3 officers lay in wait. Van Meter spotted them. He turned to run. The alley lit up. Some say Van Meter got off a few shots. Others say it was only the police who pulled their triggers. 26 shotgun wounds and 1 machine gun round, all in the back. Brown didn't hesitate. He wasn't just trying to stop a murderous gangster. He was trying to silence a potential witness. Brown was eventually fired for corruption, but never charged. Another conspirator swallowed cyanide right in the courtroom. Van Meter's killing didn't just end a man, it shook loose an entire system.
Director Hoover supervising field practice, and the target might be a gangster car.
With Dillinger dead in July and Van Meter executed in August, the golden age of the gangster didn't just fade away, it was gunned down.
Here you'll find notorious names that made evil headlines of crime. Some public enemies were sent to prison by the G-men. Others are here in this file.
By winter, Pretty Boy Floyd and Babyface Nelson would join them in the morgue. The era of the celebrity outlaw was over. And the spot where Homer died, that alley is gone. And in a twist of irony that Homer himself might appreciate, there is now a bank standing on the exact spot where he died. Maybe he's still there, standing in the lobby, handing a robbery note to a teller who never looks up. The police closed the case on Homer Van Meter decades ago, but the story, that's still wide open.
We should all be concerned with but one goal, the eradication of crime. The Federal Bureau of Investigation is as close to you as your nearest telephone. It seeks to be your protector in all matters within its jurisdiction. It belongs to you.
That means, gangsters, you can't get away with it.